Good morning and welcome to Mass Memorial Virtual Sunday School. Theme for the quarter, Worship, Sacrifice, and Offerings, Unit 1, The Genesis of Altars and Sacrifices, Sunday, July 29, 2025. Lesson title, Jacob Sets Up a Sacred Pillow, Genesis 28, 10 through 22, King James Version. The key verse, Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stone that he had put for his pillows and set up for a pillar, Pillar, and poured oil upon the top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel. Genesis 28, 18 to 19. The aim for this lesson, to discern God's interaction with Jacob during his life journey, to experience inexplicable joy in God's presence, to celebrate your God's encounter in praise and worship. Our lesson background, we have been in Genesis before, so I'm going to hit on a little bit of a different part of Genesis. The book of Genesis, we talked about, initially dealt with God's creation of the world and humanity's history after Adam and Eve sinned. In our lesson today, we will discuss the patriarchal history of God's chosen people, Israel. Chapters 12 through 50 deals with the lives of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's son, Joseph. From these patriarchs, we see God's continuing redemptive plan for humanity, ultimately fulfilled through his son, Jesus. This lesson is about Jacob leaving home because of a threat of death from his twin Esau. We see Jacob name was changed to Israel, and he also found favor with God. Chapters 27 through 50 gives us the ups and downs of Jacob's life. If we're going to talk about Jacob, he was one of the three patriarchs of Israel, the grandson of Abraham, and the son of Isaac and Rebekah. He is the younger twin brother of Esau, which means that Esau was born first and Jacob came second. Jacob's life is filled with significant events, including acquiring his brother's birthright and blessing through deception. Rebekah, his mother, favored Jacob and helped him to deceive his father Isaac into giving him Esau's blessing. And most of the time we know that the blessings were intended for the firstborn child. And that firstborn was Esau and not Jacob. So this is why we find Jacob having to flee to Haran to escape death from Esau. Jacob traveled to Haran, like I said, to escape death at the hands of Esau. But Jacob eventually reconciled with his brother Esau, but it took many, many years. There's another word in our lesson, there's pillar, Pillar, and this has reference to a stump, a monument, a memorial, or an object used in a ritual. Jacob consecrated the pillows that he had slept on as his memorial by vowing to make God his God. Jacob worshiped and gave God a tithe of all he had acquired, which is significant as we talk about the promise God gave Jacob. God promised to Jacob came by reminding him that he was the God of his father Abraham and Isaac. God said his descendants would be like the dust of the earth, and God also said that he would watch over him no matter where he would go. Our lesson scriptures, God's grace and Jacob's vision, Genesis 28, 10 through 15. I'll read Genesis 28, 10, 11, and 12. Genesis 28, 10. And Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. Genesis 28, 11. And he lighted upon a certain place and tarried there all night because the sun was set. And he took the stones at that place and put them for his pillow, Pillow, and laid down in that place to sleep. Genesis 28 and 12. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angel of God ascending and descending upon it. And including verse 13, we'll get to that one, but let's deal with these 3 verses. And this is just a precept to what is happening with Jacob. He's having to leave, and night is falling, and we know usually if we're traveling by car, we usually like to stop. So that's what Jacob did. He stopped to rest. And during his rest, he had a dream. And his dream included a ladder. And he saw angels going up and down that ladder. And he described that ladder as reaching from earth to heaven. And so he he stayed in his dream for a little while, which takes us to Genesis 28, 13, and 14. Genesis 28, 13, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give, and to thy seed. Genesis 28, 14. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. After Jacob had awakened and during this dream, God promised him that the land that he was on, he would give to him. Not just to him, but to his offspring for generations to come. And he also said his offspring would be unmeasurable. And he compared that to his offspring being as the dust of the earth. And we know that only God knows how much dust there is by grain. And so God promised Jacob that he would bless his offspring, his family, and any future generations to come. And so that moves us into verse 15. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again to this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee. This is a continued promise that God is making to Jacob, that he would protect him no matter where he goes, and that his presence would be with him and all future generations. And so that leads us, once God has made this promise to Jacob, Jacob just didn't ignore the promise. He acted on this promise himself, which leads us into our next set of topics. A grateful vow, which Genesis 28, 16 through 22. Genesis 28, 16. And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. Genesis 28, 17. And he was afraid and said, how dreadful is this place? This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And so just dealing with verses 16 and 17, unlike many of us, sometimes we have dreams and we wake up out of these dreams and we are afraid or it unnerves us. So Jacob was really afraid when he woke up. And he described this dream as being dreadful. And he could not pinpoint where this place was. But one thing that he felt, that he knew, that he didn't know where it was, but he said, God surely is in this place. And so he said this could be none other but the house of God. And this ladder was ascending to the gate of heaven. And so that brought a lot of fear to Jacob, which, if you had a dream like that, it probably would. But in his definition of dreadful, we kind of have to go back to the Old Testament and actually read the story. But we'll move on to Genesis 28, 18, and 19. And Jacob rose up early in the morning and took the stones that he had put for his pillows, Pillow, and set it up for a pillar, Pillar, and poured oil upon it, upon the top of it. Genesis 28:19. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was called Luz at first. So as soon as Jacob woke up out of this dream, he decided to memorialize this place because he felt that God was truly in this place. So what he did, the pillows of the rocks that he had slept on overnight, he used it to build an altar, a monument to God, and he anointed that monument with oil by pouring oil on the top of it. And he actually gave it a name, Bethel, which means house of God. And that's what it was called after he anointed it. So here it's a matter of recognition and honoring what God is doing for Jacob. And so that was Jacob's way of acknowledging God and what he had done, which moves us into our next set of scriptures, grateful vow. Genesis 28:20. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiments to put on. Genesis 28:21. So that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And Genesis 28:22. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th to thee. Here we are looking at what Jacob has promised to God. He said, since God has been with me and will keep me in the way that I am to go, he will provide me with bread to eat and raiments to put on, and if he will let me come back to my father's house in peace. He said, I will promise to serve him and that he shall be my God. But he didn't just say it. He said, I will surely give back to God 1/10 of everything that I have acquired and that God has provided for me. So we see how important this is in terms of acknowledging and accepting what God is doing for Jacob. You know, even today, we need to acknowledge and accept what God is doing for us in our lives, which leads us to look at some practical applications for this lesson. And all of our lessons are old stories, but they have common sense applications for us today. And the story of Jacob is one that shows us and helps us to realize that God is ever present and often challenges us to become aware of his presence. Once we become aware of God's presence in our life, we become more sure that we can trust him and he is faithful to fulfill his promise to us. Jacob marked God's faithfulness by setting up a pillar as a memorial to commemorate and remember his life-changing experiences on the way to Haran, and to remember God's promise to him on his journey and also his promise to his offspring. For us, we need to respond to God's call with faith and obedience. We have our life changes, and we must remember that God is with us, and we only need to acknowledge his presence. God has made and provided us with eternal life through Jesus Christ, and all we need to do is accept and acknowledge him. And on this note, as we go through our daily routine, let's remember that God is ever present, and we just need to call on him, not just in need, but every day, to be thankful and grateful and submit ourselves to him. So on that note, I hope you have gotten something from this lesson, and please join us in our virtual Sunday school lessons. Thank you.